Yeah, so one question that we try and ask everyone is like, if you were to recommend to someone who was thinking about getting into real estate and into investing for the first time, what would you recommend? And I would say at least 75% of our guests, they basically go with the Nike slogan of just do it. Like you can overthink anything, but if you want to actually do it, you got to do it, and you got to get it. Like, you just have to make a decision, and you have to follow through with it. You got to execute it and get it done. You're gonna learn a lot.
None of our guests have gotten masters in real estate.
Yeah.
You run into these situations as you go along, and like you're never gonna be able to predict what happens with a rental. Like, you can have some great predictions, but crazy things are going to happen. Things are going to change. The market's going to change. Things are going to shift, and you have to make those adjustments as you go away.
Real estate has fundamental value, and it is going to continue to grow over time. There'll be dips. There'll be times when interest rates are higher. There'll be times when interest rates are lower. But over time, things go up, and you gotta get in.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 43 of the Realized Gains podcast. I'm Steven Tran. I am a realtor for Oregon and Washington, and I'm a multifamily investor and short-term rental investor.
Hey everyone, my name's Jordan Lee, and I'm your co-host here. I'm a mortgage lender based in Portland, Oregon, licensed in about 9 different states, and I invest in single-family homes.
Yeah, and as mentioned, we're on episode 43. We've had 42 amazing episodes over the last year.
Yeah, and we wanted to take a quick moment just to kind of reflect and recap on some of these episodes, talk about some of our favorites and some really great insight that we've seen. But before we get started with that, I thought we'd just kind of go back and reintroduce ourselves a little bit and talk about how we each got into real estate and kind of our why and how that brought us to start doing this podcast.
Sure, yeah. So, Jordan, how did you get into real estate?
Great question, Steven. So, real estate's my second career. Before I was working as a chef, I went to culinary school to start my career in Portland, and worked in fine dining for 6 years, in only a couple of different kitchens, but moved up to a chef position. And I got to that point where I had reached a cap, and I wanted to either start my own restaurant or do something else. And eventually, after looking at it from a business perspective, I thought it made more sense to do something else and keep cooking as a passion and a hobby. And so instead, I thought about like other things that I like doing. And one of them is that I had a long-term plan of building passive income through real estate. I'd read books about it. I think at least a quarter of our guests have mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read that book, and among other books about real estate, to me, I was like, okay, I want to build a strong retirement portfolio, and I'm not going to count on just Social Security. And I thought that real estate would be a good way to hedge that, and build up a retirement of passive income. And so what I did was like, well, I should learn how to do this, not just for myself. Like, I'll learn how to do it for myself, but also help my friends and family do the same thing. I didn't know anybody in real estate, didn't have any family members, didn't really have any close friends in real estate at all. And so I just called the loan officer that did my loan, because I had a pretty good experience with her after getting, a bad referral for a realtor that we didn't have a great experience with. I mean, eventually we did have a good experience with an agent that we just found online. I reached out to the loan officer, and I worked for her for about a year. And then after that, I, became a full-time loan officer, and now she's my colleague.
Oh, that's great. And how about your real estate investing?
Yeah, in terms of investing, it took me, as I mentioned, my goal was to build passive income through real estate. I knew I wanted to have rentals, long-term rentals, and it took me quite a while. So I bought my first home in 2012, and that was with help from an inheritance from a recently passed grandparent. It just kind of fell into my lap at that time. Like, I was making $11 an hour, had minimal retirement savings, and I came across some money, and I was like, okay, sure, I'll buy a house, I guess so. but I didn't have any intention of making that into a rental eventually until I had read more about it. And so it took me quite a while. It took me about 8 years, I think that was year 4 for me in the industry before I was or maybe even 5 before I was in the position that I could feel comfortable to buy a new home and convert my old home into a rental. And then soon after that, it was like during the year 2000 to 2021 when the mortgage market was really great. Which is the nice thing about this field is that when the market's good, you get rewarded for it for your hard. If you're doing good work and you're working hard, you'll get rewarded. So I used some of those extra funds in that year to invest in a couple other single families as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So how about you, Stephen? How did you get into real estate? Because I know it wasn't your first career either.
No, so after college, I started in marketing in San Francisco. I did that for about 5 years before I switched to software engineering.
Why San Francisco? Just with like tech or?
To be honest, I have no idea.
Because you're from Portland, right?
From Portland, went to college in Seattle, and I just went to the Bay Area to just try something new. Never been to the Bay Area in my life. Just expected California to be just a gigantic
you
Los
didn't
Angeles.
follow like friends or family or anything? You just
Nope.
you just went straight for it. And did you have like a job offer or?
I had an internship lined up down in San Jose, and like I said, I'd never been in the Bay Area before, and I just expected the entire state of California to be one gigantic LA, so I wasn't prepared at all.
Was that the time when internships? Because like when I did my internships, they were all unpaid. Was yours a paid internship?
I needed money to live in the Bay Area. It wasn't much, but it was $18 an hour. I just got my business degree for my undergrad, so
Okay, so it was a paid internship. That's nice.
It was paid, and I rented a room at somebody I found on Craigslist down there.
Oh, really? Was it like 6 people in a house?
No. I just lived with a Vietnamese family.
Okay.
And their Korean roommate, and we all hung out and drank and stuff. But yeah, I started out there in marketing and built my career up for 5 to 6 years. And at that point, I wanted a career change, so I did a coding boot camp, and I switched to software engineering, which I did for another 6 to 7 years.
So marketing and tech had no real relationship to each other.
Well, I was marketing in tech. Since I was in the Bay Area, my marketing bled into the tech world, and I saw how much money my engineering friends were making.
I see.
Yeah, and so I switched to that.
And you already had some contacts in there from your marketing accounts, or not really?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I did marketing for a lot of big startups.
Okay.
And so switching over wasn't super difficult. I kind of knew what the culture of startups were, the free lunches and, the nice perks and the beer after work and everything.
You're interviewing companies like who has the most free lunch and the most best gym membership.
It's funny because every single company I would gauge in on how many lunches I would get a week. So the first company was we have 1 lunch a week, and then the next upgrade was 2 lunches a week. The next company after that, I think I got 3 until I got to my last company. It was lunch every single day.
That's when you've made it in the tech world, right?
Yeah, getting all your lunches and occasionally your dinners catered. And I had never thought about real estate ever because it was the Bay Area. Nothing was affordable. I knew
nobody buys there. Right? That's at your age at the time, right?
Yeah, nobody at my age range would buy unless they had family help. I mean, I know engineering couples, both making 6 figures who couldn't afford anything in the city, and if they were to buy, they were buying an hour outside the city. So I never thought about it.
And that was 10 years ago, right?
I mean, I feel like that was the entire time I was in the Bay Area. Right. Nobody was buying.
Yeah.
Unless, like I said, they were buying really, really far away, willing to commute, or had some kind of remote situation.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I got into real estate investing because, not even real estate investing, buying my first piece of real estate because I was basically forced to. My parents, unfortunately, went bankrupt and lost their home to foreclosure. And so when I went home, I was planning to buy it off of them and, have them
buy their business.
Buy their business, buy the land. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to qualify for that, which was a blessing in disguise. I was going to be stuck just paying a mortgage for a house for them and, probably running off to New York or Singapore to work in engineering again. And I wasn't very happy about that because I didn't want to have a $2,000 payment for just a house.
Right.
I was
because you weren't going to live there. It was just for your parents.
Exactly. And so I was getting pretty frustrated at that. I have 2 older sisters, and I was like, okay, why is it thrown on me? And, my sister said something that kind of changed my mindset. Why don't you just go buy a multifamily? And I said, what is a multifamily? I
And
literally
did
had
she?
no idea.
So did she been in? Did she have multifamily investments at the time, or
No.
She just like had heard about it.
Yeah, she heard about it. I didn't really ask. I had no context. I was literally forced into this situation. So we got an agent, my current principal broker, Alex Fan, who helped me find my property. I barely cared to look at anything.
I mean, that's so lucky that you found a great broker to start. I mean, was a family connection? Is that how you guys got?
Alex is my brother-in-law's cousin's husband. So like technically related, but
Yeah, but you knew of each other.
yeah, we met at a bachelor party, and
Okay.
when I moved back to Portland, he was recommended to me. To be honest, I didn't know anything about real estate. I basically used the first person's handed to me in lending and in real estate as a real estate agent.
And then when you guys when you told him your plan, was he just like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Here's how we're gonna do it, or how did that work?
I didn't even have a plan. Like, I think we just told him, like, I think we're gonna go for multifamily because I don't want to be in charge of this full mortgage. And so they found me something. I basically had my sister vet everything for me.
Okay.
And I mean, I
oh,
looked
because
at
you were
it.
because you were out of town.
No, I was there.
Oh, you were here. Okay.
I was working remote. I was there, but I didn't know how to vet a property. I was just kind of like, this is fine. Mom and dad can live here. Is it comfortable?
Yeah.
Is it like okay looking? Like I said, I had absolutely no experience in real estate, so I blindly signed everything. I didn't even have a number that I was particularly offering at that I knew. I think they just had an off-market property and they're saying this is the price. So I just signed everything.
And but you had like a rough idea that the rents would more or less cover the mortgage, or
It's
come
funny.
close to it?
No,
No,
they
you
didn't. They didn't cover the mortgage. I was basically $1,000 out of pocket right away because each unit was renting about $900 a month, and my parents were getting a free unit, and my mortgage was like roughly almost $4,000. So I was losing $1,000 a month. But
Okay.
my parents, I mean, for my parents to live for $1,000, it's
Yeah,
better than
that's
me paying.
better than 2,000 or whatever you would have been. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I still didn't see myself as a real estate investor, and basically until I met a friend at the gym who told me I was an investor. Yeah, that's literally all there was, and everything else was just me kind of struggling and dealing with bad tenants here and there, and having people move out, and trying to save money by fixing it up, and within a year, and I bought this with a 5% FHA loan. And within a year, I was told by my lender at that time I should refinance because rates had dropped down to the high twos or something, something great. And when I refinanced and I told the appraiser what my rents were, I'd raised my rents at that point, not on purpose, but because people left and I was just guesstimating my average rent from $900 to $1,200. And then they gave me the market rate for my parents' unit, which was around $1,200. And so I bought it for $675, and it appraised for $830 a year after I bought it.
Wow.
And so
it's crazy.
So I mean, I wasn't even really that excited about the equity, but just seeing that I just dropped my payment $800 a month. I just raised all my rents, was it $900 a month? So I was basically at that point cash flowing.
So you went from bleeding about $1,000 a month to cash flowing $1,000 a month, more
exactly,
or less. $2,000 swing, amazing.
So that was just kind of that light bulb in my head that, oh man, real estate investing is amazing.
Yeah.
And I jumped into bigger pockets. I bought another fourplex with a buddy of mine, did a partnership, and turned that into a really great investment. And then I bought 2 more single-family houses with a friend that we turned into short-term rentals, and everything's been doing quite amazing. Lots of obviously bumps and valleys along the way, but learned a lot, and definitely have grown my financial freedom enough to quit my day job as a software engineer and go into being a real estate agent and helping out investors and first-time home buyers.
I love that light bulb moment where it's like, okay, this is what's going to be doing. I'm going to be doing for the rest of
Exactly.
It makes sense. And for me, I didn't mention that, but when I converted my home to a rental and bought my new primary, it was like I said, it was 8 years later. And so I had the value of my home had gone up 200 and change. So I got a home equity line of credit, and I always educated my clients about this strategy and talked about this strategy and read about this strategy. But it's a whole different thing to talk to people about it and then actually do it, right?
Oh yeah.
So when I pulled that home equity line of credit and bought the new house, I used that equity line for my down payment, and I was it felt amazing. You know, it
yeah.
felt like I was cheating because I didn't like use any of my cash reserves for the down payment. And then my tenant was paying for my first mortgage and my second mortgage, and then I was still cash flowing like $700 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was like like you said, a light bulb moment. Where I was like, oh man, like people need to do this.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I spout it all the time, and that's why we started the podcast. I mean, like, I felt like we ran into like amazing situations that help us build our, personal wealth and financial freedom, and I was like really interested, like, how many more people can we find that have done really interesting things?
Yeah, and it turns out there's a ton. Like, I mean, we've just barely kind of touched into our network, and there's a lot of people out there that have had this light bulb moment, that have done it in a lot of different strategies and a lot of different methods. Maybe you want to talk about really quick, like, some of your kind of looking back over the last 40 plus episodes. What are some of your favorites or ones that stood out to you that you think people might want to just tune into if they haven't looked at any of our podcasts yet?
Yeah. I mean, I'll jump right into like episode 7 with Aubrey Turley. I mean, she's a really good friend of ours. After our episode, I think we met her at a summer mixer, and she's part realtor, part property manager. And I think one of the best things, and it wasn't on the episode, I mean, she gave us a great story of how she kind of was building her empire, and very inspirational. But I mean, she just showed her entire process of how she got a rental unit ready.
Yeah, super methodical. She came from previous business experience.
Yeah,
and I think she a property manager before she was a realtor too?
I think so, yeah. So I think because she was a property manager, and then they thought that would be a good addition to their
team,
business,
to their business
team.
Model and team. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, they come from like having a cabinet business. She's been in corporate at Nike, etc., and decided like, this is where I want to build my empire. And I thought that was amazing. I always say that now after I heard her say it. It's like, how am I going to build my empire? Yeah,
it's like she understands so many different facets of that world. And so you're right. Yeah, that's a great episode to turn into.
Yeah. How about you, Jordan? Any episodes that stand out for you?
Oh, yeah. I had a few on my list, too. One that I really liked was episode 9 with Marissa Sains. And she did something super interesting that was, like we were talking about earlier, it was definitely a light bulb moment for her. So she bought a corner lot in the Mississippi area. And at the time, she wasn't thinking about it. But later what she did is she found out she was able to subdivide that lot. And basically, cut the lot in half. And then she had her house on one side that she was living in, and then bare land on the other. And what you're able to do with this bare land, because it's essentially you own it free and clear, there's not a loan on it, she was able to you collateralize that or use it as a down payment for a construction loan.
Oh, yeah.
So she had her home that she was living in. While she was living there, she just spent a little bit of money to do the subdivision, and then was able to build with the land as the down payment. So basically, she was felt like she was putting zero down, and built a new home. And after that was completed, she moved into the new home, and she designed it as she wanted. She put an ADU at the bottom that she was renting out, and then she was renting out her old home, and that in one fell swoop, she was mortgage free.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it really doesn't hurt.
That's crazy.
I mean, it is crazy. It really doesn't hurt too that she bought in Mississippi before it was the Mississippi that we know now.
That's true. Yeah, she was in a good neighborhood, and she bought at a time when the market was down, but like after that she was like, and we're looking for our next one. Like and I think she's actually working on it right now.
Yeah.
We should do a follow-up episode with her about that. But like that strategy of buying land that gives you options is super useful.
Yeah, and it also just shows the value of buying in a good area. Like if you can predict what a good area is, like an area that's going to gentrify and turn into a really trendy, popular area, like that really helps.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight another episode, episode 11 with John Tay. He's an EXP realtor. He has an amazing portfolio. I think he started out with like townhouses and started building from there.
Yeah, didn't he start buying in his like early 20s or something?
Yeah, bought in his early 20s, just started picking up townhouses.
And he started as an appraiser too, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Before he was a realtor, he was an appraiser.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, he has an amazing portfolio. He's just started listing it off. He has like office retail strips. He has like 19-unit apartment buildings
that he built.
He looked at zoning and knocked down a house and built a 19-unit apartment. There's just so many things there, but I think the biggest thing that I got from that episode, because these things all sound very complicated, very, like this is out of my depth.
Right.
And for him, his big decision was, I'm just gonna go do this, and I'm gonna learn, and it's gonna be part of my skill set.
Yep.
I thought that was really inspiring. That like even if it seems out of reach, this guy just decided, I'm gonna go do this. I've never done it before, but I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna develop or subdivide a lot, and go learn how long it's gonna take with the city,
right.
and just gonna deal with the consequences.
And he was smart about it too. Like, so he was investing pre 2008. Remember? Yeah. So he had some before the crash, and I remember asking him about why didn't he panic and sell like so many people? And he's like, well, I could still see that I was paying down the loan balance. So even though my value was like less than what my loan was, I was still paying down my loan.
Yeah.
And he was still able to keep his tenants in there, and he just kept paying down the loan.
Exactly. I mean, I think people ignore principal pay down so much when they think about real estate investing. They're always thinking about the cash flow and the equity growth, but sometimes just paying down your loan is an amazing way to invest.
And like, you gotta think about the long term, right? Like when you bought, you were hemorrhaging $1,000 a month, but in the long term, that's not the case, right? Things get better over time.
Exactly.
Let's see. So another one that I really liked was with Jason, episode 30. We talked about and the reason I like this episode is because it has some new information about zoning that Portland's kind of on the cutting edge. So if you're interested in like the way zoning is moving and kind of how you can maximize your best use of the land, this is a great episode to tune into, because one interesting strategy that he's doing is he's building cottage clusters. And what this new zoning, and again, I'm not an expert. We're not experts of zoning.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Tune into the episode to check out and check out the Call the City if you're super interested in it. But from my understanding is that what you can do with this is that you can build the units first and then partition afterwards to sell them. So instead of incurring that upfront cost of partitioning and time, not just like cost, but also time expenses, you can build it ahead of time into cottage clusters, into small homes, and then afterwards you can go through and partition them. Of course, you need to build them up to meet whatever codes and whatnot. But it's super interesting that Portland's doing this, and I think if it's successful, that other states are going to follow suit, because most cities across the country are having trouble with affordability.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think the biggest thing is just that he was building on the, like you said, the cutting edge of that zoning. Like they didn't even know how to like basically lead him in terms of building these cottages and what restrictions he had to follow, and so he was basically building out those laws himself, if anything.
It was almost like the law hadn't been fully in place yet, and he's getting it ready to do it or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like he was basically one of the first people to take advantage of this law, and he had no guidance from the city because they didn't even really understand how it would work. So if you run into any restrictions or any issues with cottages, blame Jason. No, and plus, I mean, just the fact, I mean, when I got into real estate investing, I just heard in my head, never invest in Multnomah County. It has the worst rules and restrictions, and he's specifically working in Multnomah County
because of those rules and restrictions.
Exactly, like the fact that they're wanting to build more housing. Yeah, Portland is really serious about that, and there are obviously some negatives, and this is obviously a big plus.
Yeah, anytime there's adversity, it creates opportunity.
Yeah. And I also wanted to highlight episode 14 with Jamie Tran and Kenny Fast. This is the kind of almost an off-topic episode for us. It was our first non-real estate investing episode.
Yeah, it wasn't focused on real estate investing. There were story elements in it, though. But
oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, so Jamie Tran, she's a big-time luxury agent down in the Los Angeles area.
Did you see that she just started her own brokerage?
She just started her own brokerage, just real
And
high.
She's building her own app, too.
Okay, I didn't know about that part.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she does, what, like $40 million a year by herself? Something crazy.
It's a lot.
But, and then Kenny, he owns, he's an EXP agent. He owns his own brokerage. I think it was Fast.
Yeah, Fast Agent or something.
Fast Agents, yeah. And, I mean, he has, I think they've done hundreds of millions of dollars in business per year. Like, they're one of the top
5 in the country.
One of the biggest brokerages in America.
How many? Is it like 600 agents or something?
I mean, I think he fluctuates a lot, but somewhere around there.
He told me last year he recruited 105 agents, but then they also lost 115 agents.
Yeah, yeah.
But those are the kind of bottom feeders, right?
It really tells you, I mean, how hard this business can be. It's not easy to be an agent, but I think the biggest thing that we took away, we had a whole conversation about branding and social media,
Yeah, and it was, I mean, these two are both really at the top of their game in terms of branding and social media in the real estate world. So they had a lot of really great insight for us.
Yeah, I mean, some of the little takeaways that I took were, like stories are literally just an episode. Basically, it's your TV show, an episode into your life. And, Kenny is famous for posting like 15, 20 stories a day. And any talk about real estate is just that little commercial break in the episode about you as your character. Yeah. I really love that. And that obviously the fact that it disappears after like a day, you can be more of your casual self, which is really amazing. And then the reels and the posts are more your polished content.
Yeah, the stories are like, he does a good job of adding humor in there. When we were hanging out at the retreat recently, he was posting the stories, and people were just pinging him left and right. Like he gets a lot of interaction and engagement with it.
Yeah, and I mean, he's very particular about where his business is. It's obviously recruiting agents, so he's really big on talking about how great his business is, and he does a really great, like I said, he does a really great show of himself. He's a great character in his own quirky his own quirky show that I love. So it's really fun.
Yeah, great episode.
Yeah.
Another favorite of mine was Ryan Racinos, which was like was a kind of a connection of a connection. It was a client of an agent friend of ours that she'd worked with that had done a bunch of primary conversions. So basically he'd converted his current home into a rental, and when he moved into a new home, and he did that 4 or 5 times.
Oh yeah.
So and also what I thought was interesting too is that, he's not like a professional realtor, he's not a professional lender or anything. He's a software engineer, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He's in tech, so it's his side job. But he goes about it in a very planned and engineer-esque way, which I think is, for you listeners, it might be something worth tuning into if you're interested in that strategy. And he also talked about an IDA program, which is an individual development account, and what it's basically free money. It takes time, but yeah, I mean, you apply with a local bank, and what they do is they'll match your down payment if you're saving it specifically for down payment. I mean, you have to meet some various requirements, and it often takes like 6 months to a year, and he goes into more depth about it. But some of them will match up to 5 to 1.
Yeah, no,
it's crazy.
That was the first time I ever heard about this program, and I mean, it just tells you how many options there are to help you get a home, to get that down payment. Like everybody thinks it's so hard to even save up 5% for a home, and there are tons of grants.
Yeah, but what if you saved 1% and 5% of it was matched by the bank?
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
There you go.
I wish somebody told me that. That would have been great. I don't know if I would qualify, or back then, but there are amazing options out there for people to get into real estate investing, or even just get into your own home.
Yep.
But he did a good mix of both. It was his first home, and he knew he was going to turn it into a rental.
Yep. Yeah. He went into it with that mindset. He had the plan laid out.
Yeah. And I would say the last of one of my favorite episodes is episode 39, really recent episode we did with Ashley Hayden, and she manages properties on a huge scale in like the thousands of properties.
Thousands of properties, yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought like it's a legitimate full business with dozens of employees. I mean, I just found that fascinating, like how many people it takes to deal with that many properties all across the U.S. I think she has the majority of her properties out in Texas and in other spaces as well. Yeah,
pretty different than in our other episodes. She's a physician by trade, and then walked into a family business. I think, did she start at 2,500 units and then quickly acquired another 1,000?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
So it's just like, imagine going from 0 to 2,500 and overnight is interesting to think about, right?
Yeah, and then she had some interesting methods in terms of how she picked up her properties. Some things that she thought about that I see commonly used all the time now. I think the interesting one was, how close is it to a Starbucks?
Oh yeah. She came up with that before it was a thing, right?
Yeah, because like I said, now we have friends that are like, okay, how close is it to a Whole Foods? I
Yeah.
only buy properties near Whole Foods, and it makes sense. I mean, if they are doing their research to pick a good location where there could be affluent people, I mean that's good enough research for somebody who's going to be buying a multifamily property.
Yeah, and another takeaway I had from that episode was that the part of the way that their dad acquired all this stuff to start is that he bought them after the crash.
Yeah.
Back when mortgage-backed securities were not exactly bonds, they were just a group of mortgages packaged together. So it was like an office building here, an apartment building here. Whatever, doctor's office over here. So a bunch of different things. So they had all these different asset classes. And then he would go through and eliminate ones that they needed to foreclose on, and then decide on ones that they wanted kept. And the interesting theme for them was like, we're keeping multifamily. These are the ones that are performing well. These are the ones we're getting max value out of, and these are the ones that we can scale with. So I thought, of all the different classes that they went with that I thought that was interesting to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know too much about office and retail space, but she definitely does, and she really gave us a lot of insight in terms of why she chose like commercial residential over those, and gave us we had a whole talk, and it wasn't recorded because we finished up and we had a whole conversation about, well, I think we did talk about office and commercial space, that why she wasn't the biggest fan of that versus residential, but afterwards she talked about like fixers versus value add properties versus like ready to go, and like her thoughts on not putting in money into properties.
that was interesting, like not what we expected.
I really wish we recorded that. We just ended up having basically our own private podcast afterwards, that I was like, man, we should have just kept the camera rolling. So she's just has so much knowledge that I mean I honestly want to bring her back on at some point and just continue to talk about some of the things we discussed.
Okay, and then last lineup for among our favorites, the one I had jotted down was Eduardo Reyes. This was episode 15, and he's a local agent, super high producer. I think his first year he did like 60 sides.
Something crazy.
Yeah, and he made the 30 under 30. What he did really well, and I think this is a great episode for agents because it shows you how developing a niche and just like focusing on helping people and following through can really help you to build a great business. So I can't remember if he got a referral or how he landed the listing, but he had a listing for a manufactured home, and he had 28 or 30 people reach out to him about it. And so he sold that manufactured home, right? But you can only sell to one person. But he followed up with all of those other people, and then ended up converting a ton of them into clients and finding them manufacturers' homes, because he's like, I don't mind. I mean, I know these things are difficult, but I don't mind doing it. I don't mind.
Difficult, low margin, but if you do enough of them, obviously it can be a lot of money.
Yeah, and so he built a really successful business out of that, and. Yeah, because he wanted to help people, and he figured out how to do it in a way that made sense.
Yeah, I mean, I always refer him out whenever anybody ever brings up manufactured homes, because I personally don't know much about it, and I know Alex calls him the manufactured home king, so he's the guy to go to if you want to do that one specific thing. He's the expert. He's built his reputation up, and that's why he keeps getting business, not just from his clients, but from us agents.
From other agents who don't want to deal with it and that trust him because he's he's good at his job.
He's going to do it more efficiently than us. He knows more about it. He knows the trials and tribulations of everything that goes with it. So why should we handle it when we can have somebody who's an expert? And like I said, I think he's up to hundreds of units at this point.
I mean, I do the same thing for manufactured homes that are in parks, not ones that are on like land and are attached to a foundation, but for ones that are in parks, I refer them because it's a whole different loan. I refer that to a different lender as well, because she does like 150 of them a year.
Yeah, she knows
it's crazy.
What to do.
Yeah,
always refer to the experts. I mean, get your referral cut.
And, well, a little easier for you agents than us lenders.
Oh
so.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, those are our favorite episodes, but I would say that there's a lot of
all of the episodes are our favorites.
Yeah. No, we love everybody, clearly, but there are definitely a lot of creative strategies that were really highlighted over the past year for us. I would say, when we first started out our very first episode, we started with our dear friend Ben Sampson, episode 1. and we jumped straight into short-term rentals. At that point, I don't know if I had my short-term rental at that point. I might have just started.
Maybe you had just started. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know much about it, but he has a great strategy because he bought a house with a garage, and then he actually raised his garage roof to build an ADU there.
Yeah, they did it themselves. They jacked it up, right, and put in a big beam.
Yeah, no, I was just like, wow, the lengths people will go to and the work they'll do to kind of, build real estate income. It's crazy. I was like, I can't believe you went to this depth to do this. I would have just converted the garage and not raised a roof, but he did an amazing job. We actually filmed the episode right in his ADU.
It's in the ADU. It's definitely worth checking out. And it goes to show, like, this is kind of the next level of house hacking. It's always valuable to have extra units, and the easiest and cheapest way to do that is with an ADU, either in your basement or in your garage, I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, just to get started, especially in Portland where the restrictions are for short-term rentals are pretty tough. I mean, he basically did it the right way.
Yep.
Other than maybe raising a roof, I don't know if I'd want to do that. That's a lot, but
raises value, right?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Builds his equity.
Yeah.
We did have a lot of super creative. I mean, all the episodes are full of creative methods, but another one that we really liked was Jessica Wong, who also was doing Airbnb stuff.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, she was looking more at midterm than short term. So midterm is it defined as 30 days or more?
Yeah. So 30 days or more, you can kind of jump over most of the short-term rental restrictions. I think it's
right, because like if in a lot of places they just outright say you cannot do anything less than 30 days.
Exactly. And so I think her strategy, obviously, there's midterm. We heard about, like, obviously travel nurses, corporate housing, etc. She has a lot of ways to book these midterm rentals. She's on Facebook groups trying to get people in for midterm.
It shocked me because she was like, I don't want Airbnbs in places that are popular. I don't want them in travel destinations. I don't want them in vacation places. Her one that's doing super well, the midterm one, we filmed in this one. Beautiful. She's a great designer. This was done in Vancouver, Washington, which is just outside of Portland. And she's like, I get people all the time that are remodeling their house.
Or I'm here for a wedding, or here for something simple, or just random things, just life events.
Yep. And it does great, and she's super happy with it.
Yeah, it changed my mindset in terms of thinking about Airbnb as just vacations, like you mentioned. Like, I never thought of it anything more than that. It is like, people are here, they're out of state, they want to find a cheap house. This is like, it completely changes your entire game plan and the amount of amenities that you add to a house when you think that somebody's here for a different reason.
Well, and it opens your market too. Like, you don't have to just go to those destinations, right?
Yeah.
So you can buy a house in places that aren't as destination heavy. And it also, like, it allows you to go somewhere where there's not as much competition in those destination locations. How many Airbnbs are there? Like, there's going to be tons of competition. You got to have the best one if you want to get the most business. So I think it's a really smart strategy.
Yeah, and that was episode 5, and she's definitely even scaled in the past year to more. I think she was working on one in Richfield that she got live. I forget where else she has. She has multiple. I've honestly lost track of where she has them. I think she has 2 in Richfield.
There's one in Phoenix too, maybe.
Yeah, somewhere like around there. I know she has property in LA too, so she's kind of all over the place, growing really fast, and I thought that was amazing. And, yeah. And then episode 21, we had Reed Kirk from my office come in, and he's really big in terms of developing obviously multifamily properties. Yeah. And that was an interesting one. I mean, we've had, I feel like, people building multifamily before, but I think the one thing I took away from it was condoizing a multifamily.
Allowing you to sell them separately.
Yeah, I mean, with most multifamily, you always think like, I buy this fourplex, I got to sell this fourplex as its own thing. But, you can technically just condoize each individual unit and basically sell them as, individual condos. And that's a good way to, basically offset parts of your multifamily if you don't want to sell it all at once, or if you can't sell it all at once.
It helps with the construction costs. It just makes a lot of sense for building density.
Yeah, and helps especially in cities that are unaffordable. This definitely adds a little bit more affordable housing for people, and then they can own their space, which is great.
Yeah. And another one that we talked about. We interviewed Alex Ferry recently, and he did seller finance, which you may or may not be familiar with, but basically instead of going to the bank and getting financing with a traditional lender or a private lender or whatever, you have the seller of the home finance it, and there's lots of ways to negotiate that deal.
Yeah.
And so that's a very interesting strategy because you could theoretically get in with zero down.
Yeah.
And so that one, it's hard to kind of just talk about seller financing off the hip, but you should tune into that episode 42 with Alex Ferry, and look into seller financing because it's especially in this market.
Oh yeah.
It could be a nice way to get a lower interest rate or better terms or lower down than what you would traditionally get with a conventional mortgage.
Yeah, I mean, negotiating directly with the seller, especially when everybody's telling me rates are too high or I can't find anything. It's like, well, you can find a great situation. If you really want a great property, you can go around asking people.
Yeah.
If
It's a
they're
work,
willing to
though.
sell. Yeah, it is a lot of work, and it is about like finding what that seller's willing to give and what they need, in moving forward. Maybe they need a certain amount per month and willing to take less or willing to give you a great interest rate
And on the sales side, if you are a seller and you are thinking about other creative options, it can be a good way. We're not tax advisors, but it can be a good way of mitigating capital gains.
Exactly.
And
spreading out that
Yep.
capital gains over a couple years.
Right, and getting kind of like a payment as an annuity instead of just like a lump sum.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that I hear that a lot from like more elderly sellers. Like they don't need that huge lump sum right now. They just need a certain amount of money, and they don't want to pay a lot of taxes in their older years. So
right.
It's a great way for them to kind of move past that. So
totally.
And I'd say like probably the best creative strategy, which multiple people have done, is converting their primary into a rental.
I mean, that was easiest for me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of episodes did it. Yeah. Let's see who all did that.
Yeah, I mean, episode 42. We're not gonna name everybody because there's a lot of episodes of people who did it. But Alex Ferry from episode 42 did it.
Mm-hmm. Ryan Racino's, which we talked about earlier, episode 36.
Yeah, Ashley Contreras, Salem agent, episode 33.
Robin Sandy, episode 28. They did it with a duplex.
Yeah, and Tran, he's an insurance agent. He did it at episode 38. I mean, they all kind of do things a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think they're all amazing episodes here of like whether they planned on doing that initially or that's something that they decided later. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of options for people who already have their house. Like, should this be a rental? Or if you're going to buy one, should I buy something that I'll turn into a rental later? All depends on your strategy. So,
yeah. That one is just I think it's the most simple.
Yeah.
And then it's also the least down.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen conventional 3% down. Yep. I'm doing a physician loan 0% down now on it for a client. So
nice.
I mean, and obviously you had to have it as your primary to make that happen.
Right.
So primary loans are probably your best way to get into real estate investing. Yeah.
Very true. So Stephen, if you wanted to highlight, for anyone that's a first-time home buyer out there, is there an episode that would make the most sense for them to tune into?
Yeah. So these are my clients, but the episode with Rob and Sandy, I think that was episode 28, and I helped them buy. I actually met them on Bigger Pockets through the forums. I just was responding to a question, and they decided to use me as their agent. And they were looking for a duplex to buy. They wanted to buy a duplex, live in one side, renovate it, and then move on to the next one. And I believe the first property was purchased by Rob himself.
Yeah, and actually they did the renovations themselves,
Yep.
right? And we filmed in their duplex after they had finished renovating it.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, honestly, I did not know that they would go to this... the lengths they went
to
when
he told me they were renovating, I was expecting them to do some paint and some
Yeah, I mean, I would say the one thing
some floors or something.
It's a great episode because it is an amazing strategy. You buy a duplex where you're comfortable with living on one side and it meets all your needs, and you have some rental income coming from the side. I mean, I think that's probably my favorite strategy. I mean, I did that.
You're right.
With obviously I didn't live there technically. I bought it for my parents, but it was still a primary because I bought it for them.
Right.
And having that rental income coming in while offsetting my parents' costs really helped out and helped me build an amazing investment. And they did the same with their first one. And it was funny. Right after that episode, we started talking, and then I found them their second duplex.
Yep.
In Vancouver.
And what did they say? That they wanted to not do one that was as much
as much work. Yeah,
because it was like they did plumbing, they did electrical, they changed beams.
They didn't have a toilet for.
They basically ripped it apart. Yeah,
they ripped apart their bathroom. They didn't have a toilet for a while. Like
they were going to the bathroom at the hardware store nearby or something.
I'd say I definitely wouldn't. Well, not that I wouldn't advise people to go to that level. I'm just saying it's a great episode to see what you can actually do, what you can build if you have put in enough work. But there's definitely easier options if you want to spend a little more for something that's a little bit more done. This property was like 120 years old or something crazy.
Yeah.
And I got him a 1960s property, which is a lot easier.
Well, they also bought in the time when it was like you had to pay so much over asking. There was just crazy competition.
Oh, yeah. No, exactly. So, I still think that they did an amazing job, and now they both have a duplex under each of their names.
And they did it again because it was so effective.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to check in with them really soon to see where they're at with that.
Yeah, we need to have a follow-up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and is there any common thread that you noticed over the spate of all the episodes that we've had?
Yeah, so one question that we try and ask everyone is if you were to recommend to someone who was thinking about getting into real estate, into investing for the first time, what would you recommend? And I would say at least 75% of our guests, they basically go with the Nike slogan of just do it. It's so much analysis paralysis. You can overthink anything. But if you want to actually do it, you got to do it, and you got to get it. You just have to make a decision, and you have to follow through with it. You got to execute it and get it done. You're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
Nobody's getting a master's in real. Oh, there might be a master's in real estate. None of our guests have gotten masters in real estate. Everything is you run.
Some of them don't have college degrees. Yeah.
You run into these situations as you go along, and you're never gonna be able to predict what happened with a rental. You can have some great predictions, but crazy things are going to happen. Things are going to change. The market's going to change. Things are going to shift, and you have to make those adjustments as you go along. And sometimes there are, shifts that help you, and sometimes there's shifts that are challenges that help you learn.
Yeah, but if you spend too much time it's important to run numbers. It's important to evaluate the market and think about what you're doing. But if you're only going to do that, what's the point, right? You gotta get your feet wet. You got to get in there and do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Obviously try to, put up your safeguards and, know what you can handle and, obviously, plan for the worst case scenarios, but don't let that scare you from getting started. So that's the biggest thing that I've learned that I've heard from most of our guys. I actually feel the same way too. Just go for it. I was going to say, an expletive, but just go for it,
Well, and honestly, I have a few friends from, that I've talked to, and they're like, yeah, well, we're just waiting for it to crash, and we're waiting for this, and I'm like, well, keep waiting. That's the thing. It's real estate has fundamental value, and it is going to continue to grow over time. There'll be dips. There'll be times when interest rates are higher. There'll be time when interest rates are lower. There'll be time when values are higher. There'll be time when values are lower. But over time, things go up, and you gotta get in.
Yeah, I say this too. What is a good market? What's a bad market? I tend to think that things tend to balance out. Price goes down when interest rates are high. When interest rates are low, price goes up. Things tend to balance themselves out. So really, just get in and, like I said, plan out your game plan. Basically, I've had clients who've had to overpay for a home, and now their home is worth $100,000 less, but they got that sweet 3% interest rate. There's pros and cons to kind of everything. So just kind of get in, get started, and have a game plan on how you're gonna turn this into a positive.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Stephen, what is there something that you could say this podcast has done for you personally or for your business over the past, since we've been doing it for a year now?
Yeah,
reflecting on it.
Yeah, I would say that I've learned so much about real estate investing, things that I've never done. They're now options for me. They're now options for my clients. I will, if a client is in a situation where they're like, how can I make this cash flow? How can I make this work? Now I have options outside of what I've known personally, and that helps a lot. And then obviously just the network we've built. We've met some amazing guests.
Yeah, I feel like it's now so easy to just call someone up if we have a complex question about real estate investing. We have so many resources where we can call and be like, hey, remember when you told us how you did this? It's like, can you tell us how you did that again?
Yeah, Tamiko for land, I never knew anything about land deals, and she's the expert in that. I don't even remember what episode that is, but like I said, we have so many people that we can call hey, can you help me with this land deal?
Yeah, if you have an interesting situation, Yeah, that's totally true. The network is big, and it's super important to build those relationships. I think that's how I've learned about real estate and how I've learned about lending is just through talking and networking with people.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of big brains out there. There's a lot of super smart people that are doing things in super creative and different ways than you're doing, and that your local network is doing. So it's great to get out there and learn from the best.
Yeah, and I refer them deals and they refer us deals, and it's been really great for just our business in general. Like I said, I am just so happy to have the knowledge of all these people to pass on to my clients, and to, like I said, eventually pull for myself and do. I hope to have a property management business with 2,500 units at some point. Too, so.
Yeah, 50 employees as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thank you everybody for obviously listening to the last 42 episodes. We're really grateful, and I hope that everybody got to learn something and that's helped change their mind about real estate or help them get started in real estate investing.
Yeah, go in, check out an episode. Dive deep, learn from someone that's done it. So that you can get off the sidelines and take action and just do it, right?
Yeah, just do it. Thanks, everybody.